Welcome back to another episode of BookNerds. I am joined by my awesome co-hosts here, Dr. Aaron Werner and Dr. Ben Thayil with his first episode right here. And we are going to have a lively discussion about tribes. So this was a book that we picked back in December. Oh my God, here we are on February 12th of 2025. So it took us a second
2026, you're living in the past, Brianna.
Oh crap. 2026. Sorry, there we go. And excited to jump into it. So the book by Seth Godin really is just talking about, and I feel like more than ever is really, you hear this time and time again, which is find your tribe, find your tribe, find your tribe. And more than ever, I think it's necessary in all of the hustle and bustle of life. And so I'm excited to have found one of my tribes in you two. But yeah, let's kick it off. What were some early takeaways? And we'll just see where this conversation goes.
Nice. Well, let's let Ben introduce himself, because as the newest guest here. And so Brianna, I think so. You started this like 2026 started for me, where like we heard go and we tried to do New York New Year's at our house. Although my 14-year-old wanted us to stay awake, so we stayed awake. But then January 2nd, like the gun went off, and we have not been stopped sprinting since then. So it's so that's why we talked about this in December, and now here we are mid-February. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Valentine's Day. I think we've got some President's Day something in there. So welcome, and Ben, glad to have us. Let's give us the rundown on who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you all for the invite to join our discussion today. And my name is Ben Thayil. I'm actually out here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I have a practice in a little township called Miami Gardens. I also have a leadership development organization that I started back during COVID. It's called Lead OD. So we go in and help organizations, really help teams find their why and align their why with their work. And that's why I love book club, because books have changed my life. And I feel like I started reading on purpose way too late, because school taught us to just get through the report, get through the Cliff Notes, and then be done with it. Because books, they were trying to tell us books matter, but we didn't take it for real. You know what I mean?
Well, we had to take a test on it, so we hated reading.
Yeah. So, but when life tests you, there's good books to help you pass those tests in life. So, which is a lot different than the academic tests.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. Well,
I think it's different when you could pick your book too.
That's true.
I'm not being told I have to read and interpret it the way that Mrs. Swanson wanted me to read and interpret the book.
That's true. I'll start. I mean, in terms of the question, Brie, to kind of kick it off, I really liked how Seth started. He had a really big thing on communication and which direction the communication goes. So from leader to tribe, and then tribe to leader. But the most impactful communication is when it's tribe member to tribe member. And that's how the momentum of whatever the movement you're trying to develop goes. So, and then that ties into the idea he said of letting go versus stepping back. And we as leaders should be able to step back and watch the tribe kind of take care of itself and carry the mission forward. So it was an interesting dynamic between the idea of joining a group versus joining a tribe.
And I think right now more than ever, we see or feel in all of our individual practices that we're being squeezed on so many sides. As the leader, you have to wear so much and so many hats that you can't push down the pipeline, but you feel like you're out on this little branch by yourself that's just like waving in the wind. And I think that's what's cool about how he goes into the deadheads and the evolution, right, over change that has to happen. And in our industry, more than ever, we can't keep doing the same thing. And I wrote a post last week, and it said, one of the quotes in the books, it says, "Be Hawaiian Punch on a white tablecloth." And that is what this community, I think, has turned into, is that it isn't always rainbows and butterflies. We can get raw, we can get real. And it's that extreme ownership, that extreme accountability that, guys, what we do is hard. It's one patient at a time. And it doesn't scale. And we hear all these words and all these books about scaling. But when it's you can't see the forest through the trees when it's one patient at a time. So that's one of my big takeaways from the book was that the Hawaiian punch.
Be
Tablecloth
Hawaiian
shift.
punch.
We do that a lot over here, Aaron.
Yeah, there's never any doubt that Brianna is Hawaiian punch on a white tablecloth.
Sometimes more punch than Hawaiian.
Yeah. And more purple than red, but it's
there is
Hawaiian
a purple
punch
Hawaiian
adjacent.
punch brand. Fine.
Yeah. Is there? Is that the
I made
grape
one
Hawaiian
up.
punch?
I don't know. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I really liked and what I was drawn to about the book is because I think that it speaks to anybody in any sort of group, organization, tribe, whatnot. Right? It talks about how everyone leads something, and I really like the way Seth writes and how he brings things into it, but that leadership isn't about a title, which in my world I own the practice, but I'm also in Vision Source and get insights into different corporate hierarchies, working with different vendors and whatnot. And often there's a lot of emphasis put on titles. And I don't want to discount that because it's important. You work hard for different roles and different identities as practice owners. That's a title and an identity. But just because you have the title doesn't mean you're a leader, and just because you're a leader doesn't mean you necessarily have to have a title to do your job. So I'm curious from both of you, when you hear the word like leadership and leading, what's the definition of being a leader? What's the definition of leadership for you?
Well, I think that going back to like the 80s and 90s when management was like a real big thing and how to manage, and the books were written on management. And I think from that, there was a dilution of what a manager is and a leader is, and that was oftentimes combined together. But I think today, with the landscape, and Seth touches on it, but managers really are there to maintain the status quo, right? To make sure things are going how they're supposed to go according to the systems, according to the policies and everything like that. Leaders really have to deal with growing the organization, growing people. So managers manage systems and make sure the system is in place, and leaders have to do with the people. So I think leadership, because you're right, Aaron, leaders don't have to necessarily have a title, but it's the level of influence someone can have, right? So how much can, just, if you're practicing without, necessarily owning a business or a clinic or anything like that, each of us as clinicians, we're leading our patients every day. We're influencing them to take a drop for the rest of their life, or to accept a treatment plan for their kids for myopia, or we're influencing them. So leadership really is just the amount of influence you have on someone, regardless of what your title is.
And I think it's important to realize that leadership there's levels to that as well. So if you think back to optometry school, we came out in a positional leadership title. We went to school, we got some letters behind our name, but we didn't do the work to be real leaders. And anybody in any position, front desk, technician, optician, ophthalmology, like my husband, neuro-ophthalmology in Bascom Palmer, a huge hospital system, you can be a leader in any position. So I like that differentiation that you said to hit on that. Again, Ben, is managers manage systems, leaders develop and manage people. And so it's no longer, and that's where this big word of purpose comes in, and all of this jargon where it's like, leadership is lonely and leaders eat last and all of that too. I think it's really thrown around, and it comes back to doing the work day in and day out to break that status quo. And so he also says in it that change, and we're up for huge change right now, huge evolution, call it what you want. No longer can the words, and I'm writing another article, is it's good enough. That's not going to cut it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about unicorns in a balloon factory. Like, it kind of feels like we're in a balloon factory with all of this ready to pop, but you have to be that forward thinking. And it's no longer these 5-year plans or even 3-year plans. But if we bring in some of the books from the past, that Entrepreneurship 2.0, vision, mission, core values, that's where all this comes together. And change is the first sign of risk. So on page 10, change is the first sign of risk. Risk is just fear. But when you get over that fear, and right now I feel a lot of things are fear-based because we are being squeezed in so many different directions. But having conversations like this, having book club, reading books and filling up your own cup has been, I wish like you, Ben, I became a reader a little bit later in my life. And man, just what it's done for me is just amazing.
Yeah. What I, and I agree. If I could go back and Miss Swanson, I don't really care why the girl was wearing a red jacket. Right? It's I don't remember what that book was. I just have this I hate the phrase trauma, but I've got trauma from Miss Swanson arguing with me about why she was wearing a red jacket because she likes the color red. I don't give it. But I like both your definitions of leadership. And I think both of you are smarter than I am. I simplify it in my mind. A manager maintains status quo. They've got the systems, to your point, Ben. This is when you show up. This is when you do it. This is how you do something. And their job is to keep all the sheep in the pen, keep them corralled, keep them safe, keep them doing what they're supposed to do. And a leader to me is someone who breaks status quo and is constantly challenging status quo. So inevitably, they're almost at odds with each other, which is that yin and yang, and a positive when they're done properly in any sort of business, which translates into, Brianna, you talking about change, because Seth talks about how tribes want change. You don't just get a group of tribes together because you all collectively like watching the Patriots lose again in the Super Bowl, right? That's not a tribe. That's just, you're a normal human being. But a tribe wants something that's different. They're passionate about something because they don't like the status quo. And it could be big. We don't want lunch at noon. We want lunch at 12:30. Fine. Build a tribe and fight for what you want, or I mean, small, rather, it could be big to some of the political changes we've seen. But so in my mind, that's where the difference between leadership and management, and because it's a completely different skill set. All three of us, I would put in the leader category. We like breaking the status quo, almost to a fault. Maintaining is really a challenge for me, and my guess it would be a challenge for both of you in some aspects too.
And I think that's where it lights up. So he says leadership too is passion versus threats. So to tie together, Aaron, what you were saying, like corral with the pen versus now those two things at odds, passion versus threats, and ideas versus bureaucracy. And we see a lot of that in our industry because as doctors, let's call it what it is. We're the pawn in the freaking system. So Ben and I were on a call yesterday from 10 to 12 while both of us had scrubs on. Everybody else in the industry was, available on a Wednesday from 10 to 12. Well, guess where Ben and I were? In freaking clinic, right? So here they're talking about what it is to be a leader and that you have to have clarity and that you have to have, it's just all these words backed by nothing. And I think that's what a lot of us are, well, me personally, like I'm sick of it, guys. Just do the work, make the decision, take the lead, take the jump.
Yeah. I wanted to, because Brianna, you brought up the fact that Seth talked about fear, and I like the way he positioned fear. And he did mention that fear, everyone faces fear, but the underlying thing is not fear of failure. It's actually the fear of blame, like accountability and responsibility, which I thought was an interesting thing, because it's true, as a leader, you're not afraid really to fall, but you're afraid of the backlash, like if you really screw up, right? Like, because you're the one to essentially blame. So I think for me, that was a very clear kind of dichotomy of like, hey, listen, when I feel nervous or anxious about something, like, what is it? Am I afraid of that the plan won't go through? It's like, no, it's actually the blame, right? The blame is kind of the sucky part, but when you think of it that way, you can actually get through it. Like, you can be fine with the blame, right? And say, yeah, that was my decision. And then just make another decision, or a different one. And that's what makes an efficient leader, is you can own your mistakes and then move forward to the next.
I love that. First, Brianna, I personally like to think of myself more of like a rook or a knight than a pawn. But I agree with you. We're all part of cogs in the clock that works, and truthfully, we need those other people as well. I appreciate that sometimes we feel like things happen to us and that we're not part of the driving force. And I think some of that is because of the way systems have been built. I think other reasons are because we haven't taken that authority. We haven't assumed that authority to say, I'm not going to maintain status quo. I'm going to push back. It's when you when you work with a rep and they say, well, here's how you need to implement whatever new widget they're trying to sell you. That's their way of doing it. We have the ability to say, no, thank you. I'm going to implement it this way. Or, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to I'm going to steal from you. Or, hey, guess what? That's a great widget. It's just not for me. I'm not buying. So we have that ability to make the decisions. And I don't want to knock on the schools. I think they get a bad rap, but we're not trained to make a decision. It's at least a lot of my preceptors, you came out and one of the first things you had to present was certainly the refraction, but then on retina, you had to look at and present what the CD cup ratio was. Right. And if you thought it was a 3, and Lord help you if your attending thought it was a 4, right? Now you're questioning every decision you made in your life because you were off on an estimate that it has been proven to not be accurate anyway. Whereas, and so we weren't taught to defend our beliefs. We weren't taught to defend our judgments. And so when we get in the real world, we have that same mentality built into us that, we're really hopeful that the referral to retina matches our diagnosis, that they're confirming us, not that I'm confident this is the diagnosis that I'm sending over, or I'm not confident in the diagnosis, but it's got to be one of these 3. So I'm sending it to you because that's the world you live in and I've done my job. And I think that's what the hard part of optometry and leadership is, making those decisions and being confident with the decision that you made. And then recognizing, Ben, with that, the fear is that you don't have to live with the decision. You can always make another one. Just take another left turn, take a couple left turns, and you'll be going in a different direction.
He talks a lot too about risk throughout the book. So there's a couple quotes. He says, the safer you play, the more riskier it actually becomes. And right now, with everything being squeezed, the 4 pillars of your practice, your contact lens sales, optical sales, your medical vision, whatever you want to call it, and then your specialty, myopia management, dry eye, glaucoma. And in an industry that has such a status quo to it, organizations that defend mediocrity are the ones that need it, that change the most, and that it's going to hurt the most. So if you look back to other things, he brings up the music industry. The music industry was taken down pillar by pillar by pillar. The taxi industry, same thing. So it takes one person to have a belief. And I'm a true believer here that in all of our practices, like, Ben, I'm not your competitor. Aaron, I'm not your competitor. 1-800 isn't my competitor. Zenny Optical isn't my competitor. The 45 practices I drive by before I get to my own door in the morning are not my competition. But my competition is friction.
Yep.
And that's where we have to reevaluate if a patient's taking off from work to come in for an eye exam for the whole morning, because you know that they have to. A 10 o'clock appointment, you can't go in to work, and now you're there after lunch. Or you have a 2 o'clock appointment, you take off the rest of the afternoon. Understand what patients have to go through to get in our door, and they're there to solve a problem. They're there for us to lead them, for us to move them into a decision, and then we get a no, and we all stop. We all freeze because we don't want to go into sales mode. That's the first opportunity to now switch it around. Did I explain this correct? Did I over-explain? This is looking at every piece of the puzzle more than ever. I think everything is under scrutiny, and we're all feeling that pressure.
Yep.
So that's what also in book club, it helps us get that out, because you can't bring that to your staff. You can't bring that home to your spouse.
Yeah.
I call Ben, and his phone's always on do not disturb, so then he has to call me back.
He just wants to have the leadership of he's choosing to call you, not the pawn of where he's got to be, at your beck and call, and he answers your call.
I love it.
You brought up a really interesting comment on risk, because I think we all manage risk differently, and I want to be clear to anybody listening, because there's smart, risky decisions, and then there's just crazy, stupid, risky decisions. And look, we see it all the time. Somebody buys a $100,000 widget and then it ends up being a paperweight, and they can't figure out why, even though they were promised that you spend this 100,000, you're going to make $1 million in the first 60 days. Or people have missed out on opportunities because they didn't want to jump in, and you're buying your first OCT now when the reimbursement's $30-something as opposed to when it was, 3 times that. So how, Ben, when you're looking at risk, both for your office or any of the people that you work with in the coaching setting, how do you help them understand their risk tolerance, how to evaluate risk and whatnot?
So I think Seth framed it in the book very well. He said there's going to be a point in time where the riskiest thing you can do is stay the same. Mm-hmm. And then the most dangerous thing you can do is stay the same. So when addressing risk tolerance, I stopped thinking about things in terms of return on investment or opportunity costs. I think of it more of like, what's the opportunity profit, right? If I choose to do this, what's the gain for me? Not like how much is it going to cost me, or if I'm saying yes to this, what other opportunities am I looking at that I'm going to be missing out on? I try to look at it as like, okay, what's the lowest hanging fruit that's going to be the biggest home run for right now? Yes, you want to make $1 million, or yes, you want to make $10 million, but like, can you do that this quarter? Or can you do something this quarter that's going to get you to that goal because you've outlined it in the next 3 to 5 years, whatever that is. So I think we have to stick to the things that are clear to us right now. And then as we're moving forward, we can pivot into like, okay, this makes sense. Now this is going to be the next best move. So when assessing risk tolerance, I think we just have to have a clear vision of what we're trying to build and what we're trying to do, both with our patients, with our clinics, with our family, with our friends, like in every area of our life. We just have to have clear mission, vision, and values so that we know which direction we're going in. So we don't become, he talks about being the thermostat or the temperature, right? Or the thermometer, right? Yep. So the most individuals, not just in eye care, I think we're, temperature gauges. We're trying to, all these inputs, the news or social media or all these things, we have all these inputs to try to say what's going on. But the leader or the heretic, I love the word heretic, we haven't talked about it yet. You're the thermostat. Regardless of what's going on around you, you're setting the pace for the room that you're in. So I think we have to look at what's the pace we're setting for our life, for our patients, for our teams, and that helps in the decision-making on what we do next.
I don't just recommend Peak Pro to my patients. I use it daily, and so does my whole family. Honestly, it's one of those rare products my wife and daughters all love. So much so they actually fight over who stole the tea tree cleanser, the peptide cream, or even the hyaluronic acid. I had no idea this would be the case when I introduced them to the Peak Pro products. But I've learned they're a great company to work with, and their lineup covers everything from daily eyelid hygiene to deep hydration. I highly recommend checking them out. We've got a special affiliate link in the show notes, and use code Werner for 25% off. The Myopia Collective. CooperVision and the AOA have partnered in a groundbreaking initiative to change the way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo and elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, and hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today. In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being.
And Aaron, you brought up, so it's on page 120 if you read the book. It's a curve of benefit over time. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's by the time you realize your corner of the world is ready for an innovation, it's almost certainly too late. It's definitely not too early. So a lot of us are scared to be too early. We're more scared to be too early than too late. And we have to move this innovation curve. He says, it's not time, take it easy, wait and see. It's someone else's turn. None of these stalls are appropriate for a leader in search of change. There's a small price for being too early, but there's a huge penalty for being too late. The longer you wait to launch an innovation, the less your effort is worth. And more of us, because we're becoming those primary care physicians, and there's, the word disruption, however you want to look at it. Amazon's getting into contact lens sales and Zenny Optical is taking you down. Guys, innovations have been out there for 9 years, 10 years to help you take it back. So that's also the mediocrity thing. And to give us, a pat on the back here, he talks about the magician. And it's nothing to do with knowing how the trick is done, but it's everything to do with the art of doing it. There is an art to what we do with patient care. So, yesterday I talked to 2 patients. One was a Parkinson's patient that was recently diagnosed that I've been seeing for years. I asked him about his tremor, if he'd been diagnosed. Sure enough. And now I turn into talking about balance with him. And we have this sixth sense that we don't talk enough about, that it's not about the refraction or the vital signs. It's asking yourself every step along the way. And I know, Aaron, you've talked about this on other podcasts, is do we have to do all that?
Yeah.
Do we actually have to do all of that?
Yep.
And when you really peel back the layers, it really is the art of the connection, the art of that patient feeling heard. That's your differentiator over anything else, is the communication with the patient.
Oh, for sure. And I think that there's a perfect opportunity to bring tribes into that communication with the patient, and with this curve as well. So none of us want to be, as a patient, on the back end of receiving care, right? I don't want to be, and if you can picture this curve, in fact, I gave a lecture on this regarding wearables and Ray-Ban and Oakley Meta and what's coming through wearables. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I've got some super sweet looking glasses I love to run
Loving
with.
Your runs over there,
I
Aaron.
love them. But what's interesting is that, so picture this bell curve in your mind, and you've got the innovators on the front end, tip of the spear. Then you've got the early adopters. There's something unique called the chiasm that falls right between the early adopters and the early majority. So the early majority splits is where the bell curve splits. Then you've got the late majority on the right-hand side, and then the laggards on the very end. So as a patient, you never want to be receiving care that's really on that late majority of the laggards. Right? If something's wrong with me, I want to be to the left side of that curve. Some people may want to be at the front end. Hey, I want to try the experimental new drug. Some may say, hey, that's a little bit too risky for my risk profile. But nobody wants to be, hey, this has been out for 300 years. We know it works type of deal. But what's interesting in this curve, I'm going to step away from medicine for a minute, but on that chiasm, is not everything that the innovators and early adopters do stick around. We all, I'm sure, have some technology in our office that we thought was going to be the latest and greatest. And for whatever reason, sometimes the technology just didn't deliver. Sometimes it was great technology and just didn't have the funding. Who knows? But it didn't make it. But once it crosses that chiasm,
how many paperweights do you have, Aaron?
Let's not talk about the storage unit.
We all are hoarders, by the way.
Yeah, I have a very high risk tolerance. I will try almost anything, because I know that it doesn't hurt me if I lose. I'm more interested in chasing the wins. Right? The losses don't weigh on my shoulders. But once it jumps that chiasm, it's here to stay. OCT, when it first came out, was a very innovative thing. some people looked at that and said, you got to be out of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I remember looking at it saying, I've got a GDX and that thing is amazing for a glaucoma. I still think it's one of the best glaucoma instruments available for managing that. It was a one-trick pony. But when OCT came, I said, we don't really need this right now. Right? I had other friends who bought it. They made a lot of money on it initially. Once it crossed that chiasm, now, hey, OCT is standard of care type of deal. And as long as you got it on the left-hand side of the curve, you got it when the financial rewards, if you will, were good, right? Now we're on that laggard side, right? Everybody's got an OCT. And if you're starting cold, I understand why that wouldn't be one of the first things you buy, but you're going to have one eventually pretty soon in the practice. And so it's just interesting to look and see where you're at on there, where your risk profile is. And then watching the technology, whether it's SaaS technology like you've got with Dr. Contact Lens, Brianna, whether it's equipment, and saying, hey, when do I want to jump into this game? But I would argue it should be on that left-hand side of the curve.
So I'll pose this question to you both. So how do we get doctors to make the decisions early on what they want to bring into their office, in deciding the piece of equipment or becoming, quote unquote, the early adopter so that we fit on the right side so we actually are delivering cutting edge care, frontline care to our patients?
So I'll bring up the RICE method. So it's a programming thing. I think we've talked about it before on BookNerds. You can download it. We can leave it in the show notes, but it's really just a series of questions that asked in the right direction, and remembering that you have your clinical mind and your business mind. Like, you really have to understand where you're sitting. Clinical mind, clear, comfortable, concise, first do no harm with your patient so you don't get sued. In business mind, you got to take some risks, but it's just that series of questions. And so it's about ideation, giving yourself that 2 or 3 hours after you get back from a conference, or when you go to a conference. Then we were just at one. Like 75% of that room in there, why were they even there? I don't even think they knew.
What did he call sheepwalkers?
Oh
That's what
my
he
God,
called them.
right? And so it's coming away with either one conversation or what, I was talking to 2 cold starts and they're terrified to spend money. And I'm like, the bank gave you money to set up a structure. So understanding your structure, and I will tell you how successful you will be in 10 years. It comes down to those simple things, and you can't implement everything at once. So RICE stands for revenue, impact, confidence, and ease that you can do it. You score it from 0 to 10, no sevens, because sevens are just not a decision. And then you add it up, and then you implement from there. The one thing I'm constantly remembering is when I go to a CE or I go to an exhibit hall, I may be there partially for me, but like Jeff Bezos does, is he always has an extra chair in the room to remind him that there's the customer that they're serving. So maybe we need to walk around with like little patient headbands with like a chair on our head or something, or a chair on our shoulder, that none of this is for you. It actually isn't for you. It's for your patients. That's how I look at every conversation.
I like that. I think as a leader, a lot of it is mindset too. It's so Ben, your question was very interesting because you said, how do we get people to do? And I don't think you get anybody to do anything. Well, you do, but then you end up in jail. It's called harassment and or kidnapping or assault or something like that.
What is Aaron talking about? Where were you last night?
The only way to get somebody to physically do something is go hands on. So, which I would never do. So I think that it's identifying the status quo that you're looking to break. At least this is how I interpreted the tribes, and I listened to it while I was running, so I don't have the book to flip through. But you want to find change. You got to break status quo, right? I really think this technology is important technology. And so I think it's important to find the people with you who, to find people who are going to be similar thinkers, right? You propose the problem. Not everybody's going to jump on and say, hey, I agree with you, that needs to change. And so we have to be okay with letting those people go, and then continuing on to finding the ones who want to be along with us. And you do that through communication, by well defining what the problem is, what you think the solution is going to be, what the rewards are going to be, whether they're financial, whether they're patient focused, because everybody has a slightly different motivator. And then you continue to engage with your people. They then become the mouthpieces for others, the recruitment bots. But as that leader, your job is to really be upfront and take the arrows, right? To speak when everybody else is afraid to speak. When somebody says, "Hey, why are you doing that?" Not everybody's willing and comfortable being the spokesperson, because you get the good and you get the bad. So being the leader is willing to get some of that negativity coming your way, and just learning to be Teflon and throwing it off, or letting it come off you, and then being just curious as you go along, because your idea has to morph based upon the tribe that's coming along with you. They want slight different tweaks. Their endpoint might be different than yours, and it probably was collectively better. So I think that's how you effectuate change. I keep getting this video, or replaying the video in my head, of the one dude at the college football game. There was an empty stand section, and his sister challenged him to go take his shirt off and wave it over his head. And it went around Instagram and social media for a while. And, by the end of whatever quarter, like, that whole section was just full of dudes with their shirts off, waving over their heads. Perfect example of a tribe, right?
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to effectuate change, and we shouldn't have to wear shirts at a football game, right? And we shouldn't have to just sit here and drink my beer and my hot dog and watch the game. I'm going to go stand over here and do this. And it just, it grew on its own, but somebody had to be the weird dude standing by himself. Mm-hmm. And then somebody had to be the second weird dude standing with the first weird dude going, "Y'all are nuts," until it became the cool thing to do, and the script flipped.
Then how do you do it in your office? Because I know you've gotten really, really diligent with your meetings. I love your rope theory. I think that really drives home because again, we're dealing with our teams. They have their own rules they're playing with, and maybe they were raised a different way to think a different way, and they're not willing to change their mind or say that they were wrong. Can you explain your rope theory?
Yeah, so the rope theory is really, it's a method of delegation, of like getting other people to get things done. And the idea is, as the leader, you're holding the rope, and your job is to either give more rope or give less rope. So do you reel it in or you let it go? But you never, ever, ever let go of the rope. And the job is to have, the goal is to have as long as a rope as possible, right? So along the way, initially, when you have a new person in the organization, the rope is really short. You're watching them, you're monitoring them, you're showing them how to do things, because new to the organization, like, they don't even know where the bathroom is at, right? So then as time goes on, as they build trust and confidence, you let more of the rope go, right? So now they have more freedom to make decisions and everything. So it helps. The model helps with any micromanagement that you want to do, right? It's, you still have control, but you can make sure things happen on their own. And it gives a system of accountability as well. It's not like, "Hey, I'm giving you this job and you just need to do it." It's like, "Hey, I'm trusting you with this task, and if you need help with it, I'm on the other end of the rope. Just come find me." Mm-hmm. So the rope analogy is, I use this example at the last lecture I gave, but and you have to forgive me, at this point in my life, my kids are really young. So my oldest is potty training, and the first day of potty training, he did well, right? Few accidents. Within 24 hours, the next morning, I'm in my room, right? I'm here in the office, and he comes up and he's just like, "Dad, I went and peed." I said, "That's okay, bud. You have your nighttime diaper on, right? It's fine." He's like, "No, I went to the bathroom." And I said, "You went to the bathroom?" I said, "Where's Mom?" He goes, "She's sleeping." And I said, "You went by yourself?" Literally 24 hours of potty training. I said, "You went by yourself?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, is it done with lunch?" I said, "Let me smell your hands," right? Because I'm smelling for soap. I want to make sure he washed his hands, right? I said, "Let me smell your hands." So he showed a wise decision. He executed on it. So in the simplest sense, he got more rope from me. He gained more of my trust. Like, okay, this kid got it. The same things we can do with our teams, right? We can give them more or less rope based on the on the execution and the rightness of problem solving, right? The correctness of problem solving, we can let them free. Because I always say my job is for you to not need me anymore, right? The less you need me, the better you did at learning and me training you. So, so that's kind of how we deal with the rope theory.
I like that. So, and I like the safetiness of it. Of I'm not below you in case you fall. I'm just at the end, so you can come get me when you need me.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. I'm curious, when you're working with your team, I think that the analogy with your son is perfect. But it might not work on this question, because I'm curious about how you deal with agreement versus alignment. And what I mean by that is everybody has their own ideas, and not everybody's going to agree with your ideas or the direction that you take. Certainly going pee in the potty is probably something we can all agree on is a good thing. But in the office, there's different ways to do things, and certainly there's differences of opinions. So I try not ever to get agreement, but certainly get alignment. How do you address that issue or that challenge in your rope theory?
So essentially, what we do, or what I do, is in the offices, when we onboard someone, we do a what we call the PPP, personal, professional, and profit goals, right? So for each individual. So for me, that's my cheat sheet. I know what this person values, both personally, professionally, and financially. And then I have to think, as the leader, how can them being in my organization help them achieve their PPP goals? So that's how I kind of get the alignment piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, listen, if we hit this target of X amount of patients per day, um, that's going to help you with your bonus structure, and then that's going to help you. You wanted to buy a new car, right? That's going to help you with that. So
Yep.
it goes from not just organizational, but how is, I always think about it this way: if this person's choosing to trade their time for money in my organization, I have the responsibility to make it worthwhile for them. Why? Because they can go answer a phone or pre-test a patient or anything like that anywhere else. I need them to know, like, this is the only doc that's ever cared for me this way. He actually cares, like, who my family is and that I actually want to go to this school, or I want to do those things. So the alignment piece, I think, from an organizational standpoint, we have to get the organization to align with what our individual team members want to do with their life, and not just look at what they're going to do for the organization.
Okay. You said something interesting. You said you want to get the organization to align with what your team members want, not getting your team members to align with the organization. Did I hear that?
Yeah, well,
Did I hear that right?
I think they go parallel, right? You
Okay.
want what the team member wants for their life, what they
Mm-hmm.
view as their big their big goals,
Right.
and how can you incorporate that into the goals of the organization? Because
Got
now
it.
you have alignment.
Okay. Got it. So you're trying to
When he
find the best
talks too a
overlap on the
lot
Venn
about,
diagram.
yeah, he talks a lot about work in the book, where work is too time consuming to be dull. He brings that up. And that too is like, think about this, the patient movement into the practice. If someone's that's where automating, delegating, eliminating, outsourcing a lot of these tasks. This is where, and I hate to bring up like the word AI, but if you keep doing this repetitive task over and over and over,
Yep.
does that need to be done? Can it be different? And the practices that are advancing, the practices that are really moving forward and leveraging all that they can, which is more than ever, we have to do that. So it's going from reacting, like I feel like a lot of times we're in the react mode, then we can go to the respond mode, which is the level up, to then initiation.
Mm-hmm.
So this too comes back down to, 8 to 5 of patient care. If you don't have an hour and you don't put that hour into your team to talk about these things and talk about the feature and the why behind what you're doing on all those steps, right? That's, I think, where it gets lost. And you
Yep.
have to say it over and over and over again. So in like the book Story Brand, remembering from that book, it takes someone 80 times to hear something 8. And
Yep.
so many of us feel like a broken record. That's part of it. That's
Yeah.
part of the human experience.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the most frustrating but easiest part of being a leader, right? We just have to say the same thing over and over again.
That's a very good
Oh God,
advice as a
Nelly
parent as
style.
well, right?
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love
now
it.
I'm going to be playing that Nelly in my head all day. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I nominate that to be your next karaoke. We'll change a pace
Yeah,
from what I've seen come out of you before.
that's right.
Um,
Yeah, that
nice.
was actually a fun article.
So, sticking with your rope theory, Seth talks about in the book that anybody can be a leader of the tribe. So, how, when you want somebody to grab a hold of the rope, and you're giving them some authority and leading, how do you set that up? Have you pre-identified the problem? Do you help them work through identifying the problem they want to solve? Because according to Seth, leaders are trying to or create change, affect change. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you say, hey, you've been with me now for 6 months, a year, whatever the threshold is, or you see potential and you want them to become and do more. Obviously you've aligned with the PPP or their PPP stuff, and their goals, but how do you instill that now leadership in them? Are they solving a problem for you, or how do you tee it up?
So one, you just want to present an opportunity. Hey, listen, you've been excelling in these areas. I noticed these skill sets about you. You're good with patient communication, or you're good at organizing, you're good at these things, right? And there's another potential opportunity. And most employees will get excited about, like, oh, I get this promotion, right? And then you promote them, and then they're just really not cut out for that position. They're really cut out for the position that they just left. So I think it's fair to be open and honest and say, hey, listen, we'll do like a 90-day, right? We'll make sure I'm going to bring the rope in because it's a new rope now. It's a new position. I'll guide you through it. We'll see how we do. We'll set these benchmarks. Like, this is what a win looks like in this new area. And then number one, you can hit the goal and the wins and everything because you're just that good. But then, do you enjoy being in this position? Is it going to be something, the next step for you to grow to the next level? Or are you just going to be miserable doing this, and then eventually you're going to be dissatisfied with the job and then leave the organization? Because I don't want you to leave the organization, So I think just going back to the communication pieces, the more we can communicate, the more clear we can make it, and the less amount of pressure we help the potential promoted individual mitigate the risk. We say, hey, listen, this isn't ride or die on your career. I'm just presenting you with the opportunity. So my job as the leader is just to give people opportunities. That's it.
Okay.
I just give you an opportunity, and then you take it or you don't, and I guide you along the way.
Yeah, and I
like
think
that.
too, in like the controlling aspect of what it comes. So that's again that clinical business mind. When you're dealing, like, so many times and so many of these, when we're at conferences, what do we complain about? Number one thing is our team. And I think a lot of this comes back to the reflection on, did I show up like they needed me to show up? So that extreme ownership, you are the owner. This does right on you. And who are you surrounding yourself with? What rooms are you in? Where are you looking for your motivation? And assigning delegation. So again, that is this good enough, or it's good enough. It's good enough could be that could be me giving 85% is good enough.
Yep.
But that could be someone else's 200%. And I would say, oh, it's not good enough. So you have to, your staff, our teams are wanting to peel things from our hands. So it's also asking them, what do you see that I'm doing that's not valuable? How do you, because the big part of this is profit. To run a profitable business, to make more money, you have to do bigger and better things more than ever, because the dollar doesn't stretch that far. So it's also always leading with, am I doing what I'm doing valuable? Because I can go into many, many practices and say, what the F are you doing?
I'm just putting paper in the printer.
Yeah.
Or
Like, is that
checking
the
to see
best
if
thing
it's
you should
turned
be
on.
doing right now, doctor? It's like,
Weren't we all supposed to be paperless offices by now? Wasn't the whole
Oh my
EHR supposed to
God.
make sure we didn't have this stuff floating around?
We've killed
Sorry.
more trees with EHRs than
Yeah.
ever was intended.
Different soapbox.
Yeah. No, I think, but it's also redefining delegation. So, like, mine is if somebody would do it 51% of the way that I would have done it, I consider it a win. But now that allows people to also surprise me and thrive in their role without me hovering.
Mhm.
Mhm. I think
Does
also
that-
at the end of the day, our everyone wants to know what they're doing is meaningful, you know? So if an employee doesn't feel free to come up with ideas or solve problems, then they're going to feel like I'm like the way you started the conversation. They're just a cog in the wheel. They're just a pawn on the board, you know. But if they feel like the freedom to make a mistake, and they feel like, oh, the doctor or the owner values my input, now their job becomes more meaningful to them. It's more something more significant as opposed to just anywhere else they can get a job.
And one thing I've seen as we look into these books, and I know a lot of us are in other groups. So you're in the Maxwell group, Aaron. We're in a lot of different rooms, dental rooms, audiology rooms. I was just at the
Mhm.
Aspire conference. And what you see there is who you surround yourself with. And having a 9-year-old, like, friends are becoming very critical piece to this as he goes into middle school. Aaron's like laughing over here. It's like, oh God, middle school. Aren't you excited?
Have fun with that.
I'm not at all. But you realize that those 5 connections that you have are so important. And what you're feeding into that really, really matters. So when was the
Mhm.
last time you invited your staff? Like, I was speaking and I invited my office manager. I invited my whole team. She was the only one that decided to show up. So you have to give yourself those opportunities as well for people to show up with you. But when I was at this Aspire conference, what I saw with these people running these crazy successful businesses, it's the team. Like, your team really, really matters. So even here in the book, it says hire amazing people and give them the freedom to do amazing things.
Yeah. I like that.
So
So
I don't know. This book was, like, for a short book, it was loaded with some one-liners,
yeah, I
like,
like Seth.
all over the place.
Yeah, he's a good writer.
He's a good writer and it makes sense. I really like listening to him too, because he reads his own books, and so it feels more like a conversation.
Hmm.
I'm curious as we get close to the hour mark, um, what is one leadership action that each of you, and I'll answer as well, are going to take based upon this book?
I I wrote this was one of the quotes that kind of stuck out to me. He says, "Credit isn't the point, change is." So when I make a decision, I got to think about, like, am I looking for credit, or am I looking for, like, oh, that was such a great idea, or am I looking to create the change that we need to create in the office with the patient outcomes, or um, because at the end of the day, the credit doesn't really matter. It's, did we create the movement? And tribes are moved by movement, you know?
Mhm.
And if we're trying to create something significant, we want to create a tribe, then the tribe doesn't care about the credit. Everyone's like, this is what we did. It's a collective identity. So I think that's what I've looked at is, like, it's not about any type of credit, but it's about what kind of change are we making.
Yep. So I'm going to push a little bit. So and I agree with everything you said. What action? How are you going to make that an action step? What like action are you going to do to make sure that that concept that you just perfectly outlined is going to be in play in your office now?
So I think essentially the easiest thing for me to think is, I I don't necessarily want patients to come say, like, "Oh, Dr. Ben," right? Um, I want to make sure that we're an organization where people are like, "Hey, we're going to go to Lifetime Vision because they've changed my health, right? They've
Mm.
affected my health in a positive way." So it's not like, "Oh, Dr. Ben did this thing," or "Dr. Ben is the greatest," or "Dr. Ben is like," it's just like, I don't need that credit, you know? We just need to make sure the team is delivering, our mission, vision, and values are lived out as best as we can every day, and making sure that the team is on board with, hey, listen, we're doing this for the community. We're doing this for our patients. And ultimately, we are doing it for each other because we all want to work in a place that's fun to work, So yeah, I think just dropping the idea of like, oh, I'm the doctor, this is my clinical schedule and this is what we do. This is how I do it. That doesn't matter. Is we affecting a positive change for the outcome of the patients?
Got it.
Yeah. And since reading this book too, for mine, it's realizing all of this is an opportunity over an obligation. I think as being the owner of the practice and owner of these other businesses, it can get heavy. It can get really heavy and you're not out there by yourself. And so mine has been, it's every single day now for the past 2 months since I've read this book, I get texted 3 numbers from my office every single day. And that's now it showed them why we're doing what we're doing is important and why every single patient matters. Because if you're coming here asking for a raise or asking, it's not based on time. It's based on value and it's based on you asking yourself the question, does this need to be done? Because I'm not going to have all the answers. And if you're wanting me to have all the answers, like we are completely effed. So I do say that a lot in my practice. And so
what are the 3 numbers? That's such a cliffhanger. What are the 3 numbers?
I was waiting for this.
By category.
Yeah. So she texts me the amount collected for the day, total patients seen, but comp exams. So comp exams over total patients seen, and how many complete pairs of glasses sold that day. Because optical is still our bread and butter. And guys, these numbers are amazing when you get texted every day and you're like, I'm sorry, we saw it. I mean, I'll show you the number this morning. Like, it's freaking eye-opening. Let's see. Wait for it.
You're really good with the suspense here, Brie.
Yeah.
Like you've set this up like 3 times with bated breath.
All right, so Wednesday we had 8 total pairs sold. We collected $5,536 and we saw 19 comp exams over 22. So like what happened to the 11 other patients? And they don't tell me you're busy. Like quit saying that you're busy. So that's also part of this is everybody's so busy. Busy with what?
Yeah. That's one of the bad letter words in our office. So the bad 4-letter words rather. Busy and fair. I don't mind the other F word, but fair and busy drive me nuts because they don't describe anything. They're too subjective.
Aaron, what was yours? What's your change here?
I really liked I'm in our practice, we're working with a coach right now to get better. And part of my biggest challenge is being curious. I'm quick to solve problems. And I rely a lot on my intuitiveness to just kind of quickly assess the situation, make a decision and solve. So making a decision is not my problem. But being curious is. So it's really hard for me to slow down and ask why multiple times. And one of the questions that he posed in the book, or at least I wrote down, so I hope he said it because I'm going to give him credit for it, is what change do you want to lead and why? So I get lots of feedback from the team that the world should be different and we should do this or we should stop doing that. And it should, and we end up shitting all over ourselves. But to turn that into an action is what change do you want to lead and why? Because if nobody wants to lead something, then we need to stop complaining about it. But if it's that important to you and you want to lead it, then I'm going to bring in Ben's rope theory, but let's let you lead that change, with the appropriate guardrails and guidance and rope, so that you can develop into a better leader. So it'll be asking that question.
I forget who I heard it from, but it's like, as a leader, you become so good at solving problems that you're always just going to have problems. Like people are just going to come to you with their problems all the time because they're like, oh yeah, Aaron will solve it. Brianna will solve it. But it's like, but you're not empowering people by solving their problems all the time,
That's
but
the
we're
difference
like, it's the
between
most efficient way to
consulting
solve.
and coaching.
Yeah,
Coaches make you solve your own problems.
exactly,
Consultants will help you
exactly.
solve them for you. And I think a big piece of this too, as we end up another episode here, it takes imagination. It takes creativity. Uh, there's a reason ideas come to you in the shower. So it's also getting a little bit more quiet. So we've slowed down on the books that we're digesting in book club. So we are going to we're going to kind of digest a little bit more. So you've kind of seen a little evolution here on the book Benjamin Hardy, The Science of Scaling, What's Your Floor, and those types of things. And that's been really cool. So make sure that you join us on our WhatsApp group. But this was another great conversation. And yeah, we're all in this doing our best. So give yourself more credit. I'm talking to myself right there, but
And you don't have to be alone, right? That's people feel that I'm doing this on my own. Like, we're the tribe, right? We're building it.
Yeah. And isn't it the worst that trying to take your own advice? Right.
Yeah.
I love consulting other
Yeah.
people. It's consulting the guy in the mirror is a pain in the ass because he doesn't listen. But no, Bree, always a pleasure. Ben, great to have you not just in the group, but now on as a guest with us and joining us and sharing your insights and for the work you do. So always fun. We'll put links in the show notes. Certainly a link to request to be added to the BookNerds group. If you don't know one of us personally and you don't mind, shoot us a note on LinkedIn or somewhere, because we've got all sorts of crazy, alien AI bots trying to join the group and then telling us, apparently I qualify for lots of different loans. So we just want to make sure you're a real person. But that's a pretty neat community that we've got there.
yes.
Awesome.
Thanks all.